During early 2020, in the midst and height of the lockdowns, when fears were high and restrictions were tight, I had experienced a feeling like nothing before. I went outside in broad daylight to a completely empty street. The area that is usually full of traffic and pedestrians was completely deserted. Now, I'm used to walking around during nighttime when there's less people around, but broad daylight at noon, a completely empty street, it was something else entirely. The street was so empty, in fact, that I started freely walking through roads. Cutting through what before would have been traffic, I found myself alone, surrounded by closed-in buildings. It was only once I walked further that I found some civilization, but for those couple minutes alone, I was in a different dimension. I had never experienced anything like that. At that time, I didn't have a name for it, but now I know that I was in a liminal space. That's what it felt like. Throughout my life, I had other interactions with certain environments that gave me similar feelings. Being at school at after hours, when it's dark out and halls are empty. Walking down a really long hotel hallway. Being at a playground at night or being in an empty parking lot, whether indoors or outdoors. Playing Minecraft when it's foggy, or being the last player at a Gmod game, walking around the empty map with the overwhelming feeling of being watched, as it creeps you out enough that you decide to close the game for the night. All these places and environments, situations and times, whether in real life or virtual, all at least have one common thing: the sense of isolation and alienation. The isolation of being alone, at least to your knowledge, and the alienation of being in an environment that is slightly off, mismatched, a place that is used of being one way now being the opposite. The word liminal comes from the Latin root limen, which means threshold. The liminal space is a crossing over space where you have left something behind, yet you're not yet fully in something else. It's a transition. One kind of liminal space is that time in the early morning when you're floating in and out of sleep, deep in the night. It seems that there's no boundaries between reality, time, space, and thought. Everything swirls together, entering the liminal space between the dark and the light. You might vacillate between the boundary-free dimension and the world of form and structure. You aren't sure where you are, what is real and what is imagined. Then as daylight ushers you back into three-dimensional awareness, you re-enter the linear, somewhat orderly world of structure and form. That is the definition of a liminal space. Being that the liminal space definition is broad, liminal spaces can either be a place or a time in your life that gives you a feeling of unsureness and a sense of the unknown future. It is important to note that whenever people talk about liminal spaces, at least in this context, it is more likely that they're referring to the physical space. What is interesting is that the public has only recently gotten awareness on this phenomenon. Before this, images that gave off similar feelings were usually just referred to as cursed images, and no further thought was given to them. But I think the creation of the backrooms definitely had something to do with the sudden popularity of the term. I think many were interested in the psychology behind the feelings that occur when viewing images like the backrooms, the sense of nostalgia and familiarity, while at the same time the overwhelming sense of danger and fear. As if your mind is telling you the space seems safe and familiar, but your body is sensing that something is terribly off and telling you to run in the opposite direction. Further study of the phenomenon has made people discover that the liminal space aesthetic is applicable to a variety of imagery and environments, giving birth to a genre of art and photography. Today you'll find many types, some of my favorites being classical liminal, which is usually images of real spaces that give off that similar feeling. Places like I talked about earlier, generally dark and foggy with a sense of mystery. In this category you'll also find accidental liminal spaces. Places are photos that were taken for a rather innocent purpose that turn out to be pretty unnerving to look at. This also falls under the cursed image genre. Here you'll find photos of indoor spaces, abandoned malls, places that are usually full of people being empty, background photos, hotel hallways, empty neighborhoods, and real estate promotional imagery. In fact, it is believed that the original backrooms photo was an accidental liminal image. It is most likely that this picture was taken to perhaps showcase a space, maybe as an ad, and then was found by somebody who found the image rather sinister and eerie, and then further spread it across the internet to other people who also found it strange. Another common type of liminal spaces is the eerie/scary. This is where you find places that seem straight out of your nightmares. A lot of times these are edited to either further accentuate their creepy characteristics through darkening the image, adding fog, artifacts, shadows, or entities, and sometimes even turning the image into an infinite hellhole, removing any exits, turning the photo into a never-ending landscape, reaching as far as the eye can see. This is actually a common characteristic in a lot of liminal space imagery. The idea of an infinite environment seems to play a big role in this. Obviously, one of the main points of the back rooms is that they are infinite. Sometimes you'll even find these photos accompanied by a simple phrase made to bring a sense of nihilism to the photo, hinting at a bigger threat or story. There is also edited or fake liminal spaces. These are either images that were edited or photos that have been completely created from scratch to bring in the most emotions from a viewer, specifically engineered for the sole purpose to be as liminal as possible. This trend has been exploding recently, with artists bringing up their careers focusing on liminal space art. Usually, this is done in both images and video format, with the use of 3D modeling software, sometimes even inside video games like Gmod, for example. The recent Kane Pixels Backroom series is a very good example of this, but there are more out there, creating beautiful, terrifying, and breathtaking liminal spaces with creative and impressive designs and environments. The beauty of this is that we can create environments that would be completely impossible to find or replicate in real life. Indoor buildings, infinite pools, strangely repetitive environments, and oddly placed objects. Of course, we can't forget about pools. What is it about pools that makes them excellent liminal spaces? I guess it's the nostalgia. Indoor pools can quickly go from a childhood dream place into a nightmare as soon as the lights go out. There's something with large bodies of water indoors. I can't really describe why or put a finger on it. Thalassophobia maybe, or maybe claustrophobia. Meanwhile, we have images like these that give off the complete opposite feeling while still being liminal spaces. The smooth, soothing sound of water rippling, the nostalgic scent of chlorine, the bright blue clear water, and the bright sun all give off deep nostalgia while still being in reality an infinite, never-ending nightmare. Lots of these spaces are really nostalgic, playing on our childhood memories and deeply twisting them into something more. So much of this stuff is influenced by 80s, 90s, and early 2000s architecture, style, and look, undoubtedly emerging between the liminal space aesthetic and vaporwave, creating that illusion of a forgotten past that never truly existed, the sense of altered familiarity. That's what this is all about. You know, a lot of people claim liminal spaces as places they have seen in their dreams. I can definitely agree with that. Usually in dreams, the environment, while seemingly normal during the moment, suddenly is wrong once we awake and reflect back. Sometimes an area is too big or too small. Colors are wrong. A city can quickly turn into a forest and then open up into a vast ocean all within a few steps. It's rightly so that the fan lore that has been created around these spaces has claimed them as altered realities, glitches of simulation, other dimensions between the world and the void. That is what they are after all, transitions between our world and something else, something that is out of our capability to understand. It is as if we're trying to make sense of insanity. Let's take the backrooms for example. This topic is definitely not new to my channel. I've already spoken about them in previous videos, but the general lore around the backrooms is that they exist beyond the boundaries of reality. Specifically, to access them, one must fall out of bounds or no-clip out of reality, a term that was coined in video games when the main character glitches through the map and falls into a never-ending void. These pictures are not just eerie photos. No, to the internet, they are a window into a completely different realm, one where rules of the universe have no say in what is logical and what isn't. This is why many find it hard to truly grasp the true meaning of liminal spaces, because as much as they are images that give you weird emotions, they are also that transition into the unknown, places of alien origin, places mimicking human society and architecture, but surely were not built by anyone. How could anyone build this? Which is why they are described as places from dreams, constructed by our own subconscious that is familiar with the aesthetic of urban environments but is completely unaware of logical architecture. It's almost as if extraterrestrials or some form of artificial intelligence was given the task to recreate the way humans live, unaware of the use of anything, and going solely on the visual, you get these uncanny worlds that just feel randomized. Things look almost like the way they're supposed to. Almost. It's the uncanny valley, which is described as an eerie or unsettling feeling that some people experience in response to not quite human figures, like humanoid robots and lifelike computer-generated characters. This is very similar, but it's for human environments instead of human faces. I find liminal spaces truly fascinating, and I know for damn sure that I'm not the only one. There's a reason why this phenomenon has taken over the internet, because we can all relate with it. One thing that I found interesting is how, through fan contribution alone, the former backrooms have grown to engulf in them almost every liminal space, or at least every typical liminal space you'll see. Level 0 is the lobby that we all know. Level 1 is an empty warehouse. Level 5 is a never-ending hotel. Level 36 is an empty airport, and level 37 is the pool rooms, a maze of white tiled rooms filled with lukewarm water that go on forever. The backrooms now have hundreds of levels with pages of fan wikis written on them, given lore and history in their own domain, making the whole thing into a full circle. While popularized liminal spaces has inspired the creation of more, and now they all have turned into one larger entity. Almost every single liminal space archetype has been categorized as its own level, turning the backrooms into something closer to an encyclopedia of liminal spaces. It's truly fascinating, eerily similar to the whole SCP situation, if you know what that is. In fact, looking through the wiki, I came face to face with level 11, described as a giant empty city with various apartment buildings, offices, parks, and plazas, all of it lifeless. Sounds very familiar. I see now that this has come truly full circle, that one day in 2020, I might have went outside at a perfect time when almost nobody was out. Or in those few minutes, I was, unbeknownst to me, in level 11. And this is where I'm gonna end it. What do you guys think about liminal spaces? Do they give you similar feelings, and have you, in your own life, experienced anything like them? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you very soon.